Today's recipe calls for some rice. I'm going to show you how to make a super easy meal prep, also known as chicken fajita bowls. It's super simple to slap together. So with that said, let's get started. The first component of this easy meal prep we need to start with is the carb portion, which is 1 cup or 213 grams of a good quality long grain Thai jasmine rice. Snag a medium-sized holding apparatus, transfer the rice to the holder. After the grains have been placed in the bowl, add some water to the holding device. Should be enough water to fully submerge the rice in the liquid. Give the goods a shakedown for a few minutes. The goal is to wash off as much excess starch as possible. After a couple of minutes, you'll notice the water has become super cloudy and milky looking. Pour off all the cloudy water. Do your best not to lose any of the grains. Repeat the same process with fresh water. You'll wash the rice a total of 2 times. This will ensure we get as much of that starch off as possible. This step will help give us the perfect rice, meaning it will be fluffy and tender in texture. Now that it's squeaky clean, grab a fine mesh strainer and drain the rice. Drain all or as much of the water off as possible. We do not want to add any of this starchy water to our pot when we cook. It could throw off the entire cooking process. I find it helps if you lightly shake and kind of gently toss the rice in the strainer. This will help get rid of more of the water. Grab a pot that has a nice thick bottom and will also be perfect in size. We want something that will allow the rice to double in size once it's been cooked. Picking too large of a pot and the rice won't be submerged in the water, preventing it from getting a proper cook. Measure out 1 1/4 cups or 300 mils of cold water. You may have to squint really hard to ensure you achieve the proper measurement. Grab the H2O and the uncooked grains. Place the pot over the heating source. Add the water to the pot, then give it a little shake to ensure all the rice is in one even layer and it is completely submerged. Crank the heat up to a medium-high heat. We'll leave it on this ripping high heat until the water hits a simmer, meaning it is barely starting to bubble. Once it has reached the light bubble stage, toss a lid atop of the pot. You want the lid to have a tight, snug fit to it. This will help keep in the heat and steam for that proper cook. When you're done playing Goldilocks and have the proper lid, turn your heat to a really low temp, then set a timer to cook the rice on this low temp for 15 to 20 minutes, or until the rice has doubled in size, is fluffy looking, and is tender in texture. While it's cooking, don't mess with the pot. Also, leave the lid on and do not take it off for that quick peek. Once you hear the buzzer go off, it's time to check the rice. It should look pillowy and light. All the liquid should have been completely cooked off as well. You can check this by grabbing a rubber spat and getting it in between the rice and the pan. If the bottom is dry, you know it's done. If yours doesn't look like this, cook it for an additional few minutes if needed. When it's done, take it off the heat source with the lid still attached to it. We want to allow the rice to steam and rest for 10 to 15 minutes before we mess with it. After the resting period is over, gently fluff the rice to break it up from the large hunk of grains it is. Following that, grab a half sheet tray so we can toss all the rice onto the tray. Make it into one nice even layer. Set it aside to allow it to completely cool down. Now we can move on to the next portion of the meal prep. We can start by preheating the oven. Set the temp on the little oven box to 425 Fahrenheit or 218 Celsius. Next, grab a half sheet tray. We'll toss this in the oven while it's preheating. We'll do this so it becomes nice and hot. I'll explain more later in the video why we need to do this. Snag yourself 3 bell peppers. Use whatever colors of peppers you prefer. You'll cut the top and bottoms off each pepper so we can take the cores out. Make a single cut straight down one side of the pepper. After all of that has happened, we can start cutting the veg. Use the tops and bottoms of the pepper for your meals, or if you're really hungry, you can have them for a snack. Cut the peppers into about 1/8 to 1/4 inch thickness. This size will give us veggies that will have a nice crunch to them after they've been cooked. After your possible snack break, we need to decore the peps. Accomplish this by laying the pepper on its side. Find the slit that you made earlier. Place your blade on the inside of that, then slowly follow the curve of the veg on the inside. With your knife, cut out the core and ribbed parts. If you are not comfortable doing this sweet move, you can also pull the core and seeds out by hand once the top and bottom have been cut off. When the core has been taken out of all the peps, we need to cut them into the small little sections like we did earlier, which is 1/8 to 1/4 inch thickness. It's easier to cut the bells skin side down into the long strips of veggies. I cut mine lengthwise. You might have to make large sections of bell peppers to make them more manageable to cut. Repeat the same process until everything has been cut. Toss the prep veg into a medium-sized holding device. The next item we need to cut is one medium-sized yellow onion. Chop the top off, then cut the onion in half. From there, you need to peel all the paper skins off. Once things are naked, cut the hairy root end off as well. Slice the onion into the same size sections as we did with the peppers, cutting from front to back. Be tough and do not allow any liquid to seep out from your eyes. It's also known as tears. Anyways, add the sliced onion to the holding apparatus of the other veggies. Mix the veg up into one mess of goods. Let's move on to the protein portion of the meal prep. Collect 4 large to medium-sized chicken breasts. It should be around 2 pounds and 5.2 ounces, or 1,053 grams worth of protein. Clean things up by cutting off any excess fat or parts that are undesirable. Now that things are all cleaned up, we need to flatten the chick out. This way everything is the same thickness, which will result in a better end product. Using some type of protective layer, fully cover the meats. Use your favorite smashing device for this task to flatten things out. You should notice the chicken is thicker on one side, then tapers to be thinner. We need to flatten the thick side to match the rest of the chicken breast. Use a light to medium force when you're doing this. Give it the visual or feel test to ensure it is even all the way across. Now that all of our goods are the same height, we need to cut things into strips. Do this by cutting them into sections that are a 1/2 inch thick and 2 to 3 inches long, going from tip to tip of the chicken breast. This size will give us pieces that will be juicy and tender. After you've cut everything into strips, set it aside and give your work area and hands a good clean down and wash. The next thing we need to do is make our spice mix for our chicken. Grab all your favorite spices or use the same spice mix. Using a small bowl, add 1 tablespoon granulated onion, 1 tablespoon granulated garlic, 1/2 teaspoon cumin, 1/4 teaspoon chili powder, 1/4 teaspoon cayenne pepper, and lastly, add in 1 teaspoon dried oregano. Give everything a mixer to combine it into one dusty mess. Taste test your spice mix and adjust the flavor profile as needed. Now that you have a super secret mixture of powders, bring the chicken back. Add in 2 teaspoons of a neutral tasting oil that has a high smoke point. Coat the chicken in the liquid fat. Ensure everything has been covered. After that, sprinkle the chick with a few fat pinches of coarse ground kosher salt, then work that in. Following that, sprinkle the seasonings into the bowl. Mix everything together until each piece looks like it has been covered with the spice mix. Do this in 2 sets for the best coverage and spreadage of spices. Do not overwork your chicken. Doing so will cause the spices to become clumpy. Let's jump back to the bowl of veggies. We'll add 2 teaspoons of the same oil we used earlier. You guessed it. Mix everything up to ensure it has been coated in the oil. Make it hail a few good pinches of coarse ground kosher salt. Give them a quick taste test and adjust the seasoning as needed. Now that those 2 components have been taken care of, we can start cooking. Pull the hot half tray out of the oven. First, add the veggies to the hot tray. Spread the peppers and onions out so they completely cover the sheet tray. After that's happened, add the chicken on top. Ensure the chicken is spread out and not overlapping or touching one another. This is imperative for the best even cook on the chicken. If you touch the raw chick with your mitt, give it a thorough wash. When all the goods are on the pan, snag that thing. Toss it into the preheated oven box on the middle rack for the best results. Set a timer to cook the goods on this first side for 6 to 7 minutes. The reason why we added the empty tray to the oven is because we wanted things to become super hot. So when we added the veg to the hot tray, it would help jumpstart the cooking process while also searing the veg. Oh, and of course, we achieved that sweet sizzle sound like fajitas should sound. After the first buzzer rings, pull the tray out of the heat and give it a stir around. This will help give us an even cook on things. It's also a good time to check your chicken to adjust the cook time as needed. After the mixer, toss it back into the fiery heat box to allow it to finish cooking. We'll cook it for an additional 6 to 7 minutes or until the chicken reaches the internal temp of 155 Fahrenheit or 68 degrees Celsius. When the buzzer rings, pull the hunk of metal out of the oven. It's imperative to temp the chicken in the thickest part with an instant read thermometer. If the temp checks out, take it out of the heat and let the chick rest. allow the rice and chick/veg to completely cool down before we put it away. In the meantime, you can collect your favorite storage devices for our finished meals. I like using reusable vacuum sealed bags. It makes it convenient to freeze the meal prep. Now that everything has cooled down, it's time to portion our meals. If you've never done this, it's super simple to do. All you need to do is simply divide out each portion into however many meals you decided to make. I like to do this by weight because it makes it much simpler. The peppers and onions, they hold a lot of water, so it's going to make the weighed out portion a lot different. So do your best to evenly divide it amongst your meals. When you have that figured out, toss the peppers into the holding devices, vacuum seal shut your bags if you went that route, or pop the lids on top of your containers. Add a lime wedge to each meal, or add some Greek yogurt and hot sauce, or do all three to make it the ultimate meal prep bowl. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy. Alright, now that our chicken fajita bowl is done, let's give it the old taste-a-roo. So looking at it, it came out super aesthetically pleasing. There's a ton of color going on for it, especially from our vegetables. Our chicken has some spices on it that also bring the color, and our rice is nice and bright and white. Overall, it looks super tasty. The chicken looks like it's going to be really juicy and tender. The vegetables look really delicious. The rice looks fluffy and just perfect. So let's give it a shot. I'm not going to try the rice because we already know it's super tasty. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how much I love this rice. And we got it down pat now since we've cooked it so many times. So we'll just skip that and jump straight into the chicken and vegetables. That's a big old bite. That's a big old bite, boy. This thing came out so dang tasty. The chicken itself has all those spices on there to make it really good. We get a little bit of spiciness from our chili powder and our cayenne pepper. The oregano and cumin shine really well together. They're not overpowering by any means. It just brings a good amount of flavor. The onion and garlic powder play so well together, and it's like the best combination ever. The vegetables are super tasty as well. They're nice and healthy tasting. The peppers are kind of sweet just because of the color that they are. The onion is really good, and it pairs so well with that garlic powder as well. And of course, the rice is good. And then you get the perfect bite, and it's a match made in heaven between all three ingredients. The texture on the rice is nice and fluffy and perfect. The vegetables are al dente, so they have a little bit of crunch to them, which is nice because everything else is a bit soft. The chicken itself is nice and juicy and tender. Overall, this thing is just super good. This meal prep meal is super simple to knock out, and you can make it to your liking any which way you want. Maybe you want it more spicy, so you add a ton more spices to the chicken, or maybe you add some fresh jalapenos to your vegetable mix. Or better yet, you make it a steak fajita bowl instead, which sounds super tasty. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. And I'm tired of standing, so I'm gonna go sit down or lay down or figure out something to do that doesn't require me to stand because I'm over it. So we'll see you on the next one. You just keep saying a ton. The battery is going to die. All right, we got a fresh battery. We should be good. Maybe I'll put it in focus first. Taste through, and have a really good meal. So with that said, really good.